Varsity Voices Chicago Catholic League football podcast, where we bring you information and some of the inside scoop about the Chicago Catholic League and info on high school football in Illinois. Make sure you follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and on X at varsity_voices1. You can also email us at varsityvoices312@gmail.com. I'm Joe Frevaletti, one of your hosts, and here with me is your other host, Dan Frevaletti. Dan, today we have a special segment for our listeners. It's our first From the Coach's Office segment, and it features an interview you did this past week with Tim Racki, head football coach for Nazareth Academy, who, by the way, are the current IHSA 5A state champions. Before we jump into that interview, can you give us just a bit of a preview as to what we're going to hear from Coach Racki?
Sure. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, it was a great interview. I was really pleased to be able to talk to Coach Racki. We actually played against each other back in high school. Coach Racki was a year ahead of me at Driscoll, and while I was at Bennett. But we kind of have known each other and knew a lot of the same people, that sort of relationship. I wouldn't say we were friends, but we had known one another, and through the coaching ranks had always had a chance to talk about, common relationships and people that we've known. So it wasn't completely a cold interview, which was nice. But the reason that I wanted to get Coach Racki on was, they've had such an interesting run, going from where they were last year at starting 0-4, finishing the season 4-5, being selected. That's, like I talked about in the last episode, benefit of this conference. You can get a ton of playoff points, and then going on a run to win the state championship the second year in a row. And wanted to talk about that. Coach Racki was inducted into the IHSCA Hall of Fame. AJ McCarthy drafted. So just had a ton of stuff going on around the program and for Coach Racki professionally. So I felt like it made sense. He couldn't have been better. Really, I was so pleasantly, not surprised, but just he was so forthright, and so open to any questions that I had. He took a lot of time. You'll see here we touch on a lot of different subjects, and it was really something that I was pleased with at the end of it, and I think you'll see from the interview he's got a lot of thoughts on different things, and knows that this is not something that is just happens by luck. He talks a little bit about his strengths and why he feels like there's been a lot of success at Nazareth. We go through a wide range of topics, so it was a really fun interview to do, and I'm looking forward to having the people hear it.
Yeah, it'll be good. I had a chance, obviously, to listen to it, and some really good information in there, and a really good conversation with Coach Racki, and really provided some information and some insight into who he is and how he does things and how he runs his program. So I think people will find it very interesting. Let's get right to it, Dan, and we'll play the interview, and then afterwards we'll talk a little bit about what everyone or what we've heard here with the interview with Coach Racki. So let's get right to that.
Coach's Office. In today's episode, we welcome 9-time state champion, 2024 Illinois High School Coaches Association Hall of Fame inductee, head coach of the reigning back-to-back 5A state champions, Nazareth Academy Roadrunners, Tim Racki. Coach, thanks for joining me today.
Dan, it's great catching up with you, man. Thanks for having me on.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for being on. So I went back to October 21st of last year, which was selection day for the IHSA playoffs. And looking what has happened for your program and for you professionally is incredible. It's an 8-month run that is just unparalleled. Let me just go through this real quickly. So you make the playoffs at 4-5. You go on a great run, culminating in your ninth state championship at the end of November, becoming the first team, non-10 win team, to accomplish that feat. In March, you get inducted into the IHSCA Hall of Fame. In April, your former QB, J.J. McCarthy, is drafted in the top 10 of the NFL by the Minnesota Vikings. What's that time been like for you?
Well, the football gods are certainly smiling on me this past year, and they certainly do during the playoffs. It's been, it's been a blessing. It's been very humbling. I've always been, because of how I was raised, a strong sense of humility. And as you played football at a high level and for many years and coached for many years, it really takes a team effort, with anything. So, with being inducted into the Hall of Fame, I just, when I got the call, it was like I was reflecting back on all the relationships with the coaches, the players, of all these great teams I was blessed by God to be a part of. And certainly being with JJ and seeing his friends and family and teammates from Nazareth and also on Michigan, it just really kind of gives you a pause to slow down and give thanks to God for just a tremendous run. Because as you know, you coach. When I got into this, I remember at Driscoll, we lost in the semifinals in 2000, and I was walking off being like, man, will I ever be this close again? And not, now I'm just shaking my head when I look back on, all these great teams I've been a part of.
Sure. So you mentioned a lot of relationships and you had a chance to reflect back. At this stage of your career, you've had a ton of success. Do you have people, whether it's people you played for, coaches, coached with, or even coached against, that you still look to as some sort of a mentor, or are all those relationships now the type where you're acting as a mentor and dispelling advice or dispensing advice?
That's a great question. I always look to be a learner. I think the time when I need to retire is when I think I know it all. I certainly don't. The one strength that I've had consistently since I was a young head coach at Driscoll was surrounding myself with smart, knowledgeable people. I'm not afraid to say I don't know ever. I'm not afraid to say, okay, this guy knows this more than I do. He's going to help our team more if I let him do this coach. And I think that kind of blossoms. I mean, people, my strength, one of my strengths is, culture building, leadership, motivation. And so I'll share that with a lot of people and people that are close to me. But I continue, Rod Molick, he just retired from my staff, but he was my sophomore football coach in high school at Driscoll. And he's in the Hall of Fame for baseball. He was a hell of a baseball coach. So having those type of people to feed off of that are still mentors to me went a long way with in my career where I continually develop. I'm not one to really look behind me. I think the Hall of Fame caused me to pause and to reflect finally on my career. But as you know, especially in high school head coaching, whenever that season ends, it's on to the next season. So regardless of what I've done in my career, whether win a state title or losing the playoffs or not make the playoffs, I'm always thinking about the next season and thinking when I get old, I'll have time to enjoy and reflect that. And that's why I felt old when I got inducted to the Hall of Fame.
Sure.
Right, yeah. It felt like a freaking retirement party, man.
Yeah, it marks time, right? Yeah. It's great. Well, you mentioned motivation and always looking at the next year. Your team, is always young, but you had a lot of juniors in leadership positions and roles. What do you have to do? It's one thing for coaches to stay motivated and look back. What do you do for high school age kids to keep them motivated?
Well, we put a lot of time into leadership in the summer, especially since we have the time to. And that's where I really I start from square one and what are, the kids, the players that wore the jersey before them, what they've built here at Nazareth and how they did that, not just on the field, but off the field and in the locker room when I'm not around. So I'm really heavy into instilling that into my players and also getting them, the older guys, to embrace these freshmen that are coming from all over the place and don't know many kids and don't know our playbook and don't know the school. So I get them to help those young kids as they have been helped when they were younger, and now it's when you have that type of culture that just kind of grows from year to year, you still have to put work into it. But I think I don't think I know when people ask me how do you do it, and I'd say, well, I think the X factor for me personally is that whole relationship building and leadership and motivation. I mean, case in point, last year we were 0-4.
Right.
And not one, we weren't pointing fingers. I wasn't sitting there screaming at them. Actually, after the game, I believe it was IC when we were 0-4, we were missing some top guys, but we took them into overtime and lost. But, man, I was like, hey, this is great. Well, this is happening for a reason, but we're playing better. That's the best game we've played in 4 games. So let's just, keep the faith, focus on what we've been doing, and those little steps in the process in terms of what do we need to work on. And the kids buy into that, and that's why it never crumbled, especially when you think you're 0-4 and people would check out. That just never happens around here.
Right. Well, that's great. It's a testament to your program. So, one of those players, having watched the state championship game last year, I thought the best player on the field in any of the games was Gabe Kaminsky.
Oh.
Just unbelievable. And I think one of the best players in the state, committed to Stanford, if I have that correct. But, what do you do for a player like that? He's probably a self-motivated guy, but what advice do you give him in order to say, hey, we got to keep working here. It's never, you never stay the same, right? You always have to try and improve.
It's more the advice I give to my staff, where I just say, stay out of Gabe's way.
Right.
Well, here's what happened. I mean, we had him as a D end,
right.
the past couple of years, and we had a heated defensive meeting where I wanted to put Gabe at linebacker earlier than we did, because teams, it was obvious to me that teams were just checking. They'd look, where's number 5, and they'd run the other way, or they would literally game plan around him, and they were taking him out of the game. And I'm like, this. We got to put him back as a linebacker so these guys don't know where he's going to be. He's that athletic. And, my defensive staff is awesome, by the way. But I always give them, crap about, because I was right about this one. Linebacker. It was like the kids, he was playing it for years, and
it looked like oh, he's a natural linebacker who they moved to defensive end. Now he's playing his natural position. He was just outstanding. And it's funny you bring up defense, and I always say when I think of a Tim Racki coach team, I think defense, but I think the 3-5 stack with deep linebackers, a ton of pressure. Yeah. But you've adapted a little bit, right, over the years. I don't know if you still use that at all, or if you're strictly a 4-3 guy, but why is that a personnel-based thing that leads you to maybe adapt a little bit?
You know what? I think it goes back to your question about mentoring, and so, which I'm very proud of this. So when I, years back, I was losing guys. Other programs were poaching my top guys, and I wasn't faulting them. They were getting defensive coordinator spots. So after I lost one of my top guys, I was thinking I had another, and I taught him from when he was a young coach for years. And so, but I was very happy for him. He got a DC job. I had another guy that was just like him, and I was thinking, I go, man, I got to give up the reins here as a defensive coordinator because I don't want to lose Jeff Tumpain. And so I gave Jeff the DC. Very hard for me, by the way. I mean, but the first year, 2 maybe. Now it was the best thing I ever did, because now I get to be involved in each phase of the game planning with every offense, defense, special teams. Put more time into leadership. I'd be more of a literal head coach, and it's worked out well. But Jeff became better than I did, because Dan, you nailed it. I was, I thought I was a good defensive coordinator. But I was predictable, man. I was like Buddy Ryan. I'm bringing it. I'm blitzing 80% of the time. Everybody knew it. I would try to hold back during a game, but because I'm such a hothead and, I'm passionate about football, I was a linebacker and a strong safety in college.
Sure.
I just wanted to saw people in half. And I took that philosophy with me as a coordinator, and you just can't do that. So Jeff really took my defense to another level with the 4-2-5, sim pressure, more zone, and really mix it up. And that's why I was so proud, because it was like the pupil passing the teacher. And it was very proud. Keith Lukes came back to me. He's my DC. He was the one that he was the defense coordinator at Lake Park, and he came back to me. So he's running the ship now on the defense.
Excellent. Well, that's great. It's a great explanation. But but outside of Gabe Kaminsky, and then you've got Logan Malachuk, James Penley, Sam Steck, you're kind of all conference returnees. Who's the guy that we might be talking about this fall that we might not know today? Who's kind of jumped off the film for you this summer?
Oh God, yeah, you need Penley. You know what? Jake Sestone, who was a receiver, he suffered an injury his freshman year. He was the first freshman. He's going to be a junior. But his freshman year, he was the first freshman I pulled up the varsity because he was that good. He was, getting sawed in half. He held onto the ball. He had speed. And then he suffered a freak injury in a walkthrough we were doing for special teams. But it was a bad injury to his ankle. And he came around. He was much better last year. But this summer, I'm watching him. He just clocked electronically a 4.48 40. So he is bringing it. So I would look at Jake Sestone. Trenton Walker is another wide receiver DB that came up last year. He had a stellar game he's real long, Trenton is, and he had a stellar game in the state title game. But now this summer, he's another one, which, Dan, after you bring a sophomore up, after they get their feet wet, it's almost like their junior, senior year. It's 2 senior years. Because now they're the speed, they're comfortable. And so I know Jake and Trenton are absolutely killing that. Johnny Colon is another one, started for us last year. He put work in the offseason. He's going to be a junior. He is just looking outstanding at safety for us this summer. So those three I would keep an eye on.
Excellent. And you mentioned playing some guys at a young age, and you've never shied away from that, maybe more so than any other team in the CCL. What goes into making that decision? Hey, we're going to bring this kid up, or he needs to wait. Is it strictly physical? Is there more to it?
It's the summer evaluation, and I think it's the foundation that I tell my parents and players, where the bottom line for me is, and I use this, I say we're classless, and I mean classless by, I don't care if you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior, like some coaches will play seniors because they're seniors. I never got into that. On the varsity level, it's the best players are going to play at the varsity level. And in the summer, we get a chance to evaluate if a young man is ready for that next step. And fortunately, that's worked out for me in terms of our success and the development of our players.
Excellent. All right. So I feel like if you've asked, I'm gonna try and talk to as many coaches as possible. But I feel like if you've asked several teams in the CCL who their rival is, they would say Nazareth, which is a testament to your success. If we did a poll of your players, what school do you think would get the most votes as your rival?
Oh man. Well, because they mix up these divisions.
I know. Right.
It used to be Bennett.
Yeah.
That used to be a huge one for us.
Right.
I think St. Francis this past season emerged as one, and I see, and to your point, it's almost because we know that everybody's highlighting that wants to beat us on our schedule, so I think we have like a trio or a collage of rivals.
Sure.
Where we know everybody wants to take us out. So.
Yeah. That's my thoughts on it exactly. I think a lot of people would say you guys. So, all right. Well, I just have one last question, and I want to thank you for your time today. I appreciate it. It's been great. And you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. All right. It's a tough one, but I am sure over the course of your career, you've had college opportunities that have come across your desk in some way, shape, or form. You've got a formula that works, but what is it about high school football that keeps you here, and versus maybe saying, hey, I want to look at a next step or see what I do, see if it translates in college? Why stay in high school?
Yeah, well, ironically, it's only twice where I really thought about making the jump, and the first time was when I was leaving Driscoll. When I left Driscoll, and my wife was pregnant with our. I have two boys, so she was pregnant with our first child, Jake, my oldest son. And at that time, I was a very young coach, and I was very blessed. I didn't expect to have, I had a lot of success as a young head coach.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had some opportunities to go to college, but I also knew from being a young head coach and having recruiters come in, I knew that what that life entails. And so even my family was like, go to college. Even my wife's side, everybody was telling me, you should go to college. And I sat down my wife seriously. I said, okay, you know what? I can do this. I will do this. But here's what it's going to entail for you. Because the rate in college football, the rate of divorces, alcoholism, just moving,
Sure,
the recruiting, I would never be home.
right.
Especially with how I am with the game of football and how I work at it. And so it's rough life. For me, yeah, I'd be able to do it. For my wife, you're going to be raising a kid alone. I'm going to be on the road. We could be in Wisconsin one year, and then we have to move to Wyoming the next, and then to Pittsburgh the next year. And that's the thing. Even the guy, the offensive coordinator I had at Southern Illinois, and this goes way back.
Sure.
This will really age me. It's Bill Callahan.
Oh, yeah.
Who's the guru for the offensive line guru in the NFL now.
Absolutely.
At that time, and I my last year playing at Southern was 89. Callahan was, I think, 87. And he was a younger coach, and he was the offensive coordinator at Southern Illinois University. He was in 6 states in 6 years before he became the SIU offensive coordinator. So that puts into perspective how much these guys move around. Even today on my phone, I'll be like, the coach from Northern. He goes, no, I'm not at Northern. I'm at, Idaho, or, I'm at, at Florida Central. It's just crazy how much they move around. And, going to a job where Fitzgerald at Northwestern had that staff for years and years is rare, or hooking on with Dabo Sweeney. It's just rare. So anyway, and I told my wife I'm happy, more than happy. I love coaching high school football. It's stable. I know I won't have to worry about, moving you guys around or my kids being messed up because their dad's never around. And then when the pandemic hit the second time, I put my hat in the ring for the head coaching job at Elmhurst because it was closed, because it was open, the job at Elmhurst College. During the pandemic, and I made it as a finalist, but I didn't get the gig, and that was on me too. I mean, they were great people. I didn't put enough time into preparing for recruiting and all that stuff. So people ask me that. I'm like, no, Elmer's was great. I was the one that messed up by not putting in a little more time into my recruiting plan and all that stuff.
Great. Well, Coach Racki, thank you so much for your time today. This was incredible, better than I could have expected, really. And it was great. We appreciate your support of Varsity Voices. I'll let you have your day back, but Tim, I really appreciate it, and it was great catching up.
Oh, Dan, you're going to kill it with what you're doing. You and your brother have a great idea. I think a lot of people, which you guys know, with the best private school in the state of Illinois, it gets a lot of attention. So I think a lot of people are going to eat this up, especially as we get closer to the season and into the season for you guys. So I appreciate being on, and I love catching up with you, man.
All right. Thanks, Coach. Have a good day.
Dan, that was an outstanding interview with Coach Racki.
Thank you. Yeah. I told him, I said, please bear with me. I'm not a pro, so in any stretch, but he made it great. Yeah, he was forthright. Joe, that I think one of the things that you can sometimes expect is maybe some coach speak, and getting, I don't know if I'd say all the politically correct answers, but the answers that maybe you expect to hear. I heard none of that. I heard someone that was really open, honest, told me exactly what he thought, about the college stuff. I thought that was really great to hear, and some great insight. You start to see that he's in a great spot. He's doing a great job. He told me they had a camp, for a youth camp going on, and they had over 200 kids at the youth camp. So they are in a very, very healthy position, and he's done a great job building that program.
Yeah, one of the things that stood out to me, and you can get the sense from the conversation with him as to why he's been so successful over the course of his career. Not that the X's and O's aren't important to him, because I'm sure they are, but the way he builds his program and talks about building his program, making sure he's doing the things to instill that winning culture and a sense of pride in what they do. He talks about growing his players into well-rounded young men, both on and off the football field, which is commendable. But I think some of those things, as you listen to his answers or you listen to him talk, you can see why he's been very successful in what he's done over a long period of time.
Yeah, and I think that probably a lot of these coaches would have some similar answers as far as what they're trying to do, but trying to get it done and actually doing that, and making it a priority, in the summer during this time of practice when it can be, the temptation to run offense, defense, special teams is great. And even though they have 25 practices, there's a clock ticking that says, gosh, we are X amount of days away from kickoff, opening night kickoff. So I think there's probably a lot of pressure to make sure that players know what they're doing, and especially on lower levels, like Coach mentioned. But being able to make sure that the culture is sound, I think, is really important in high school football. And you've got to make kids believe in something bigger than themselves, um, in order to have success. He clearly does a great job with that, and I think that was a great answer to, and the fact that he was adaptable to handing over the defense. He mentioned defensive guy, and he was spot on, and they had success with it. I think they won state championships, running his defense, maybe at Driscoll and even at Naz, and so there was really no immediate need for him to change, but he was willing to listen and adapt. And it just shows that he's always learning, which is what we want from the players. We want players to always grow, not only on the field but off the field, but be adaptable. If you can set an example like that, it's clear to see why they've had so much success.
Yeah, and the mentoring aspect as well. Like you said, he's willing to continue to learn. He's not steadfast in his ways. He's willing to make changes. He's willing to not only be mentored, but mentor some of his other coaches and players, obviously, as well. So all of those things build into a really sound and stable and successful program.
Yeah, and you see the results, right?
Yeah,
The results are evident. Yep.
For sure. All right, so that's it for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. Make sure you tune in next week where we will start to preview the divisions. We'll take a closer look at the teams, some of the players. Again, don't forget to follow us on Spotify and Apple, where you can find us by searching Varsity Voices Chicago Catholic League Football. Also follow us on X at varsity_voices1. And if you want to email us, you can do that at varsityvoices312@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and we will talk to you next week.